Vision transcends fear because when the mind locks onto a purpose greater than pain, every obstacle becomes a stepping stone. There is a force inside you right now that doesn't care how dark it looks outside. That force is vision. It is the power to see beyond what is and focus on what must be. And in the story of India's rise as a global defense power, vision wasn't a luxury. It was the only weapon available when everything else was lacking. No one handed India the blueprint to missile supremacy. No one gave permission. No one believed it could happen. The world watched, expecting collapse. But something else happened. While others looked at the odds, India stared straight at the outcome. And this is where most people break. They see the mountain and forget the summit. They see the weight and forget the strength they haven't tapped into yet. But not the minds behind India's missile program. Not the dreamers, the doers, the visionaries who had no room for doubt because they were too busy building destiny. They knew fear is temporary, but purpose is eternal. They understood that the path to power is walked by those who are willing to keep going when the crowd stops clapping. They didn't need applause. They needed altitude. They didn't wait for global validation. They launched with silence and landed with strength. And that's what most people forget. History is not written by the loud, it's written by the relentless. Vision transcends fear because it refuses to be intimidated by uncertainty. It doesn't shrink in the face of failure. It stands taller after every setback. It sees defeat not as the end, but as feedback. The Indian missile system wasn't crafted in conference rooms. It was forged in midnight oil, failure reports, and fiery belief. It rose not from easy wins, but from painful lessons and precise recalibration. Every test that failed, every critic that laughed, every barrier that said, impossible, they all became fuel. They became a mirror to reflect one thing: we will rise, and nothing will stop us. Because when vision burns hot enough, fear melts. Fear is a whisper. Vision is a roar. Fear says, you can't. Vision says, watch me. Fear counts the risks. Vision counts the reasons. Fear folds. Vision fights. And you need to understand this, not just for defense, not just for nations, but for life. You're not in this world to tiptoe through comfort. You are here to dominate the battlefield of doubt with the artillery of decision. You're not here to escape failure. You're here to use it as a launch platform. Look at how India was treated, seen as the silent one, dismissed, dependent. But silence is not weakness. Silence is focus. While the world underestimated, India upgraded. While others bragged, India built. While critics speculated, India engineered. And now the world can't ignore what it once refused to notice. A force that created missiles, not to start wars, but to end dependence. Not to dominate, but to declare, we are not afraid. That kind of vision only comes when people stop waiting for ideal conditions. The launch never happens in comfort. It happens when belief outweighs doubt. It happens when the mission becomes bigger than the mess. The scientists, the strategists, the soldiers of this journey, they didn't just work on machines. They worked on a mindset that rejected excuses and embraced execution. A mindset that didn't blink when told it couldn't be done. Because people who see the future clearly don't beg the present to believe in them. They just build it anyway. And when you carry vision like that, it becomes your armor. You stop being swayed by statistics. You stop caring who doubts you. Because now you're not moving for applause, you're moving for purpose. You are not reacting, you are commanding. You're not following trends, you're creating standards. And if you want to rise, if you want to lead, if you want to be the missile in your own life's war zone, then stop thinking small. Start seeing big. Start seeing what doesn't exist yet. Start speaking in the language of certainty when the world only offers doubt. You must stop fearing failure and start fearing wasted potential. You must stop waiting for clarity and start creating clarity with action. The missile system didn't just move India's defense forward. It moved the mindset of an entire generation forward. It showed what happens when a nation doesn't ask for respect, but earns it, not by noise, but by results. You don't have to shout when your vision speaks louder than words. And every time India tested a missile, it wasn't just about military range, it was about mental range. How far are you willing to go when everything is against you? How many failures are you willing to face before the breakthrough? How much pressure can you hold before the launch? Because that's what separates the ordinary from the unstoppable. This is the time to understand that nobody becomes powerful by accident. Power is built in the unseen hours, in the decisions that nobody applauds, in the belief that burns when everything else feels cold. Vision transcends fear because fear needs evidence, but vision only needs fire. And when you light that fire, the world can try to stop you, slow you, distract you, but it cannot deny you. Because a focused mind on a mission is more dangerous than any missile, more precise than any plan, and more powerful than any position on earth. Burning desire fuels innovation, because when the need to rise becomes greater than the fear of falling, something unstoppable ignites. It's not intellect that moves mountains, it's obsession. Not casual interest, not hope, not empty motivation. It's the fire that says, I will, or I will die trying. That's how revolutions start. That's how history bends. That's how a nation like India went from being dependent to designing one of the most sophisticated missile systems on the planet, not because it had everything, but because it was willing to become anything. There's a difference between wanting and needing. Wanting means you'll try. Needing means you won't sleep. India didn't just want to innovate. It had to. When the world doubted, when resources were scarce, when global sanctions slammed every door shut, India didn't flinch. It doubled down, because when your desire is strong enough, limitations become irrelevant. Constraints become creativity. Resistance becomes rocket fuel. No one handed India missile technology. There were no shortcuts, no cheats, no helping hands. There was only desire, raw, relentless, burning through failure after failure. Every misfire wasn't a defeat, it was data. Every disappointment wasn't the end, it was a step. That's what burning desire does. It turns obstacles into instructions. It doesn't stop to complain, it adapts, it evolves, it climbs. Desire doesn't need applause, it needs oxygen. And that oxygen is purpose. When your heart is on fire, you don't wait for permission. You break through the noise, the fear, the doubt, the uncertainty. That's what innovation demands. You want comfort? Stay average. You want evolution? Get uncomfortable. The Indian missile system was born in laboratories soaked in sacrifice. It was born in minds that were tired, eyes that were bloodshot, hands that trembled, but never stopped moving. And that's what most people miss. Innovation doesn't come from having the best. It comes from bringing your best, no matter what you have. The greatest breakthroughs don't happen in polished rooms. They happen in pressure, in doubt, in resistance. And when that fire burns strong enough, it finds a way. When desire takes over, it doesn't just solve problems, it rewrites the rules. That's what happened. India didn't just build missiles, it belongs belief. It showed the world that innovation doesn't belong to the privileged. It belongs to the possessed. Because when you're obsessed, when your mission becomes non-negotiable, you stop being driven by circumstance. You become driven by choice, by clarity, by refusal. Refusal to settle, refusal to stop, refusal to accept the idea that we can't. That's the truth behind every missile, every satellite, every system. It wasn't easy, it was necessary. And when something becomes necessary, you find strength you didn't even know you had. You don't innovate because it's convenient. You innovate because you must. Because the alternative is defeat. Because standing still means falling behind. Burning desire doesn't ask for support. It creates momentum from resistance. It thrives in the storm. It doesn't care if people laugh, doubt, criticize, or walk away. Because once that fire is lit, nothing can put it out. Not failure, not fatigue, not fear. Do you think India had every tool, every part, every resource from the start? It didn't. It had vision, had brains, but more than that, it had the unshakable desire to never be vulnerable again, to never rely on anyone else for its survival. That's not a technical goal, that's an emotional vow. And emotion drives execution more than logic ever will. When you care enough, you'll build what no one thought could exist. You'll try one more time when logic says quit. You'll climb when your legs are shaking. You'll rise when the world says you're done. That's innovation. It's not a clean process. It's not a straight line. It's chaos and courage. It's ambition that refuses to shut up. It's staying up another night when the prototype keeps failing. It's rewriting the code, recalibrating the system, restarting the countdown. It's hearing no for the 100th time and answering with, watch me. That's what drove, not access, not privilege, just a burning, non-negotiable need to rise. And if you're waiting for conditions to be perfect before you start, you'll never begin. If you're waiting for approval, forget it. Burning desire doesn't wait. It pushes, it breaks, it builds, it invents what doesn't exist. That's how India became a defense powerhouse. Not by luck, not by waiting, but by burning from the inside out. While the world watched, India worked. While others predicted, India produced. Understand this, desire without action is a dream, but desire with discipline, with focus, with fire, that creates impact. That's how missiles are built. That's how systems are designed. That's how futures are created. Not with ease, not with comfort, with hunger. with hunger so deep that losing is not an option, with passion so wild that the impossible looks like an invitation. That kind of fire can't be bought. It must be chosen. It must be suffered for. It must be fed every day with pain, with repetition, with faith. And when that fire is strong enough, it will burn through every excuse, every limit, every wall standing in its way. Persistence is the greatest weapon, because no force on earth can break the will of someone who refuses to stop. It isn't talent that wins. It's a person who keeps showing up again and again when the world has already walked away. You can outlast the storm if your mind is stronger than your mood. That's how India built a missile system the world couldn't ignore, not in a single day, not through flawless execution, but through thousands of failures that never had the power to kill the mission. Every time a test failed, every time the system malfunctioned, every time the world laughed and said, "You're not ready," something more powerful was being built than any missile: resilience. And while others may have seen setbacks, the minds behind those systems saw steps. They didn't see failure as defeat, they saw it as information. They didn't interpret resistance as a warning, they saw it as confirmation they were on the right path. That mindset is rare. That mindset wins wars before they begin. People think strength is loud, but true strength is quiet. It's invisible. It's the quiet work done at midnight when everyone else is sleeping. It's the decision to stand back up when your legs are shaking. It's trying again and again and again when no one claps and nothing seems to work. That's what India did. It failed forward. It learned in public. It took the hits, but never surrendered the mission. That's why persistence is lethal. It wears down the impossible. It tires out resistance. It breaks through barriers not by luck, but by pressure applied long enough with absolute commitment. When you're persistent, time becomes your ally. Doubt becomes your fuel. Fear becomes irrelevant. There were moments in India's missile journey when the cost was high, the pressure was unbearable, and the outcome was uncertain. But quitting was never on the table, because persistence makes quitting irrelevant. It turns maybe into must. It says, even if it takes 10 years, we're going to launch. That kind of resolve bends the world around it. That kind of mindset builds things that others only talk about. Look around at every major innovation, every victory, every moment in history where greatness was achieved. You'll find one common thread: the refusal to quit. India's rise in defense wasn't about flexing military muscle. It was about earning the right to be secure. It was about breaking free from dependency. And when the world put up walls, persistence found a way to break them down, brick by brick, through discipline and grit. It's easy to be excited in the beginning. Anyone can feel inspired on day one, but the real test is day 100, day 1000, when nothing is working, when everyone's moved on, when the goal feels farther away than when you started. That's the battlefield most people never survive. That's where dreams die. But not here. Not when the vision is too important to let go. Not when the pain of success becomes dangerous than the pain of continuing. That's when persistence becomes dangerous. When it's not just about success, but about identity. When quitting feels like betrayal. When giving up means losing who you are. That's what powered India's defense rise. The ability to endure, the discipline to improve, the courage to look failure in the face and say, again. That repetition rewired an entire nation's future, not by sudden miracles, but by consistent effort, daily progress, brutal honesty, relentless improvement. Every test that failed taught more than the ones that succeeded. Every crash, every misfire, every mistake was turned into momentum. Persistence doesn't ask for speed, it demands endurance. It doesn't ask how long it will take. It only asks, are you willing to do whatever it takes? That's the question every innovator must answer, every soldier of the mind. Are you willing to keep going, even if it takes a decade? Are you willing to walk through the fire, knowing it will burn, but trusting it will forge you stronger, because that's what it costs. That's what real progress demands. That's what separates the powerful from the pretenders. There are no shortcuts to greatness, only the long road. The road of falling and getting back up. The road of critics and silence. The road of slow, steady, painful growth. But it's the only road that leads to real strength. India didn't skip steps. It took every hit. It learned from every punch. And that's why it now stands as a global force in missile defense. Not because it had the easiest path, but because it had the most unbreakable resolve.